how USA president needs to be convinced that helping India's economic rise will be in the USA's interest in the long run. Then we will see that part of the reason why India is at the receiving end of the Trump's trade tantrums is because he may have fallen into a trap that we created of projecting India as a rising power and the world's fastest growing economy. The US President Donald Trump's trade policy action against India suggests the narrative of a rising India, and USA says that President says that India makes billions of dollars because of an unequal trade, so you have to open your more market. The action has been explained away by some as a collateral damage, with the main targets being China and a trade surplus enjoying OECD economies, especially Germany and Japan. But India has become a collateral damage because of these particular things. Then in the second part of this lecture, we are going to see about that how by destabilizing the region that supplies oil and gas, US is keeping the rising Asia off balance. USA is keeping the rising Asia off balance. If President Trump is insensitive to India's concern, New Delhi will have to seriously rethink its foreign policy options, since sustaining high economic growth with a low inflation is a fundamental developmental priority and a key strategic objective of India. So the geography, politics, security and stability of West Asia over the past century have always been about oil. Nations were created, regimes were changed, and the wars have been waged in the name of oil. And from the First World War till the Second Gulf War, it was about Western power securing access to oil. And how currently, by continuing to bring blockade against Iran and Venezuela, and the US hostility towards this Venezuela and Iran is having the effect of imposing constraints on the supply side, which the rising Asia badly needs. Saudi Arabia, UAE, Iraq and Kuwait, the major oil exporting nations, can they match up the loss that India is making? Or why China is still considering that it will continue with a strong relationship with Iran despite US sanctions? Can we do the same thing? At the same time, we will see in the third part of this lecture that the United States of America is very keen on signing a free trade agreement with India, and USA giants like Amazon and Walmart, they always want to penetrate India's large middle class market, ever expanding large middle class market, India's demographic dividend, which makes it one of the youngest nations of the world with 65% less than 28 years of age. So this market will keep on expanding for the next 40 or 50 years, and Amazon's entry into India has made it already the world's richest person. Same thing the Walmart wants, and there are many other they want. So in order to secure an FTA in India's market, America is withdrawing GSP benefits to bring more and more pressure on India. So we will see that Trump's plans to withdraw the trade advantage to India, and what is GSP and how it will hurt the Indian exporters. Donald Trump, why is he attacking India on trade, even as US seeks help from it to counter China? This is also something that we are going to see as a part of this lecture, that on one hand you want India to help America to circumscribe or to neutralize the rise of hegemon China. At the same time, you are attacking India on trade. That has to be seen. So, needling India on trade may have a corrosive effect on
President Donald Trump opened another potential front in his trade war on Friday. His administration terminated India's designation as a developing nation. This means India would no longer be exempted from duties in exporting nearly 2,000 products to the US. Trump said, and I quote, that India has not assured the United States that it will provide equitable and reasonable access to its markets, and hence it was appropriate to terminate India's preferential treatment with effect from the 5th of June. India, of course, responded by saying that it was unfortunate that the US did not accept a resolution it has offered during the bilateral trade talks, but maintained that its trade discussions would be guided by its own development imperatives and concerns.
The effect on India-US relationship. And Trump's focus has always been a narrow trade grievance at the expense of broader strategic concerns. It's a narrow trade grievances which he focuses at the expense of broader strategic concerns. So this US pressure, how will it change the things, and how Modi and the new foreign minister as Jaishankar must deal with the turbulence unleashed by the Trump's challenge to the global trading order?
Impact. But the other thing is, what happens in the event of what is looking like a slowing GDP worldwide because of what the yields across the world are indicating? And if this trade war and the shape that it is taking with Donald Trump, I mean, the US-China issue is one thing, but Trump's comment on Mexico, they're refusing to meet eye to eye with the EU as well. If all of this brings down the world growth numbers, and what does a country like India or some of the other EMs do in such a scenario?
How can we deal with the turbulence which has been unleashed by the Trump's protectionist challenge to the global trading order? Will it slow down our economy? Already the jobs and the employment have reached a historic low. Can India take this particular pressure? And a very small modicum of trade surplus that we enjoy, if it goes away, then how India can balance its economy? And Modi's key test will be that Modi's key test with the Trump will be to ensure that Make in India program of India doesn't clash with Make in America. This will be the Modi's key test. We are going to see this. How this will be the Prime Minister Modi's key test, that he has to ensure that Make in India doesn't clash with Make in America. And that is important. And then we will make some suggestions that how it is very better to have a trade deal with Trump. And India is not a middle income country yet. And even though the Trump has referred to India as the third biggest economy in the world, the question is why we still deserve special tariff treatment in trade because of the much poorer per capita income that our country has. Much poorer per capita income. And India continues to be a source of ire for Trump, who does not like the fact that India has a trade surplus with the US. And Trump wants to use this particular pressure to maximum pressure, so that India opens its economy and accessibility of market, not only for Walmart or for Amazon or for e-commerce giants, but also for agriculture and dairy products, which will devastate India's agriculture and dairy sector. And how, we will see in this particular lecture, how India can do a China, how we can copy from China to avoid a trade war with the US. How can India make an agreement, just like the way China has done, to avoid a trade war with the US? All these things we have to see, and there are a number of issues we will see on which USA keeps taking India to the World Trade Organization on several issues. Whether it is the new American steel and aluminum tariffs, or the proposed cuts in H-1B professional visas, or the cancellation of H-4 spouse visas, or the dairy and the pork products, or Indian price reductions on medical devices, and how America wants India not to copy the generic drugs. What impact will it have on the India, which is considered as the pharmacy of South? We will see as a part of this lecture. And then we will see that do human rights really matter in the US foreign policy? Because President Trump has been very categoric that in America's first model of foreign policy, human rights would have to take the secondary place. And it's a free trade that is the focus of US's foreign policy. Can we sustain that? Is a big question. In a similar way, the American protectionism and America First policy and the renegotiation of NAFTA and China-USA trade war, in the light of all particular things, we have to see that since Americans have stopped funding under the Trump administration of United Nations, the United Nations Security Council has become unable to deal with the global security issues. And because of the cut in the funding, the UNSC has become dysfunctional. How? We are going to see in this lecture. The US has withdrawn from the United Nations Human Rights Council. The World Trade Organization is also under pressure. And UNHRC, the United Nations Human Rights Council, has become dysfunctional. Mike Pompeo has not uttered a single word against Myanmar or Sinhalas, or he has not uttered a single word against Uyghur Muslims, which has been detained by the China. Not a single word on any human rights issue throughout the world. Yemen war, Syria war, actually Americans, they are on the aggressive side. So how US cut in the funding and withdrawal from the institutions of governance is making it very hard. And because of the tremendous pressure, all these global governance institutions are now becoming dysfunctional. Even the Americans have junked the Paris Climate Change Agreement, and it has withdrawn from the Trans-Pacific Partnership. So everything is under stress, and if everything is under stress, and the country first is the only announcement, then how can we cope? How can we cope on this particular thing? And how the American foreign policies and American domestic agendas, the focus of this has become skewed towards the domestic issues. And the candidates which are contesting, the amount of resources are spending that needs to be devoted, they say, towards increasing prosperity and economic growth. So they are cutting the funding to make America great again, but all this money is landing in the hands of only 1%. So all this is a part of this particular lecture. And promoting prosperity in America is central to America's long-term future. This is what they believe. And the US is the world's leading superpower. And it boasts the world's largest economy, a robust military presence, and a sophisticated technology. But its secret sauce is the shared values, which they say, of democracy, free speech, peace, prosperity, and human rights. But because of their complete focus on making America great again, how the world has slowly started suffering. This we will see as a part of this lectures. And then India is looking beyond the defense sector for a stronger trade and commercial partnership with America. And